Hello and welcome to Classroom Chronicle. I'm your host, Pete Braley. This is the show that highlights what's going on in the schools that serve New Bedford students. And our guest today, we have first Dr. Kathleen Mackenzie, the coordinator of clinical and behavioral services for New Bedford schools, and Cara, who is an author and educator, and she's got a great project, a great presentation she made recently that we're going to learn about. So first, welcome. I'm so glad we could make this work.
Same here. Happy
Emails
to be here.
going back and forth, trying to coordinate schedules.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes.
First, I'd like to find out a little bit about each of you. Dr. Mackenzie, tell me about yourself. You said you're from New Bedford?
Yeah, I was born in New Bedford, wasn't raised here, but I've been here for since 1989.
Okay.
And working for the school systems. It'll be 27 years in September.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was a school adjustment counselor for 21 years, and then the last 6 years, through the pandemic, the coordinator of clinical and behavioral services.
Okay. Many people might not be aware that the school system even has a program like this. Do you find that often, that people aren't aware of that?
They aren't aware, and actually New Bedford is pretty unique because there is probably 70% of schools in Massachusetts don't have a person like me, sort of a clinical leader in the schools. Mm-hmm. So it's a very unique position, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Cara, what about you? Where are you from?
I was born in Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Okay.
My mom lives in Wareham, and I moved back to Wareham to help with my parents during the pandemic, and my dad passed, and then I moved to New Bedford about 3 years ago and have been a part of the community, and I've done various things. I was a artist in residence at the National Historic Park a year ago. And through that, I also have gotten some grants and done some things here in the city, and I love it here, and I'm having a great time being here as an artist.
Were you an artist who got into education, or were you an educator that liked to be an artist on the side?
Right, it's completely overlapping because I think I was always a camp counselor, I was always a babysitter, I was always someone that was great with kids and loves kids, but I always made art too. And I went to UMass Dartmouth and studied painting and drawing many years ago. And so I've been in this area, I love this area, and but I taught for a good chunk of time in Lexington, Massachusetts as a high school art teacher, and that was the inspiration for the book that I made.
All right. Speaking of the book, it is called Here I Am Me, and I'm curious about how this project came to, who found who. Kathleen, you were telling me that you saw the book first? Is that how it all came to be?
Yeah, so Layla Johnson, who's Miss New Bedford teen, I believe, or whatever, she contacted me and said, hey, I would like to donate this book to all 3 middle schools and to the high school.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I took a look at it, it looked good. It looked like something that was very engaging, and I'm thinking if a teenager is endorsing it, and that's good with me, that's good enough for me. Right. So all of the schools, all the middle schools and high schools has the book. And then, but I didn't really think too much more of it. But then I was speaking at an engagement with Bessel van der Kolk and through the Mass Institute, Marion Institute, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And so Cara happened to come up to me afterwards.
Pounced on you.
Yeah, and gave me a book, signed it, and said that she would be interested in working in the schools. And so then I was able to take the book home. I was reading it. I said, this is really good. This is a really good book.
Cara, what is the book about?
Yep.
It's like a primer for mental health. It's an informational book, so it's not like it looks like a graphic novel, but it's really more like an encyclopedia for all kinds of mental health topics. But I think what's nice about it is it acknowledges that we all have a brain, we all have a nervous system, everyone has to regulate, and it's something that we can all embrace. And it does go into deeper, more serious topics as the book progresses, but it's in cartooning. I'm using my cartooning and comic skills to relate the information. Which
so you did all the illustration?
I did all the illustration, all the coloring. Yeah, and that's more my strength, and I really had to collaborate with experts and therapists and neuroscientists and addiction specialist to read the work and give me feedback and to kind of make sure it was like a 6-year process to create this book. It was a very slow, careful process, but ultimately I wanted it to be something that kids would be able to read and to hopefully talk about with people that they care about.
Right. So how did the program come? This was a presentation that you gave recently at Roosevelt?
All 3 middle schools, actually.
Oh,
so
all 3,
it was
okay.
really lovely, and what a joy to see the amazing staff and educators that are working at all of these schools. And I got to kind of jump in, talk a little bit about some of the content in the book, but then as an art teacher, my way in of connecting is through drawing. So I lead mindful drawing workshops, and so I would have the entire 6th grade class for Normanton, and they would bring the kids in, 40 at a time. I would take them through these steps of relaxation and doodling and just getting creative, and then they would just let their feelings out for our hour together. And I got to do that in Roosevelt. I got to do that at Keith, and then we made like a little installation, an interconnected doodle that all of our drawings fit together. And it was really special.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, this was for the 6th graders?
For at the Normanton and the Roosevelt School, I did the entire 6th grade, and I did a little bit different at Keith. We worked with the 8th graders.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did I read somewhere in the notes that one of the reasons is to prepare the students for the middle school experience, and the 8th graders, I would assume, the high school experience?
Yeah.
I don't know who wants to take a first shot at this, but why is that such a difficult age, middle school, and of course going into high school, but especially why are we focusing on middle schoolers?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that's the age where we can lose kids. If we
lose them how?
Lose them because they're really struggling or grappling, I would say, with their identity, with what they're, how they should be in the world, trying to get a hold of their self-esteem, a lot of experimentation. And so they're at very, higher risk at that time, especially because their prefrontal cortex isn't developed, right? And we know it's not developed fully until 24, but at least, there's a little bit more development there later in high school and whatnot. But, and I think just given our environment right now, it's very challenging. We've got, I literally wish we would have kids have to pass a test, like a driver's test, before they go online, because online environment is so toxic and dangerous in a lot of ways. So we've got a lot of environmental challenges, and we see, in fact, there's more like sexting and that kind of stuff going on actually in the middle school level than at the high school level. I think because kids at the high school level are a little bit more aware of sort of the consequences of some of that type of behavior, but middle school they really aren't. So there's a lot of recklessness that goes on and a lot of difficulty with self-regulation. And I've been a big fan of art for a long time, and when I was working with kids I did a lot of stuff through art. And I do think it's a great way, a great tool for self-regulation. So I think this is like a really fantastic contribution to the field that Cara has made.
Cara, did you see the need for something like that? How did it develop?
Yeah, so, and I think this is good to point out too, because I think a lot of us feel that aren't like professional therapists or trained counselors feel like, well, what do I do? What if I feel uncomfortable? Our generation didn't talk about this, and I certainly felt that way as an art teacher, and I felt like in the art class, kids open up and their feelings come out. And especially for my very shy or creative kids, they might choose me as their person that they're going to tell something to. Right. And
you're safe.
I was safe, and I'm like, oh, they're choosing me, and they don't like their counselor. They don't want to, how do I help them? So I was very desperate to, and then some, more serious things happened at the high school too that made me go, oh, this is awful. Like, what do we do? So if there were any trainings about depression, suicide, addiction, I would sign up for those. And for my own heart, I really wanted to learn this information. And because I'm such a visual processor and an artist, I drew all of my notes, like the symptoms, the sequence, the way that you could talk about it. And I had all these drawings, and other people saw them and said, "Oh, that's so good. Can I borrow that? That makes it so easy." And this was years and years ago, and it kept snowballing. It was like the project I called that wouldn't go away. I'd be trying to work on other things, and people were like, "About that mental health thing, could I use that?"
Yeah.
And you want to come talk about it? And it slowly evolved from a little zine and a little pamphlet that spoke to adults that work with kids into something that spoke directly to the kid. And that took many years for me to figure out how to do using my cartooning.
Kathleen, what do you say to people that, to parents who might say, well, they just need to behave? You know, I don't know if that's the old man in me coming out, but I remember when I had 4 children, and when my oldest was in middle school, I remember going to a PTA meeting, and the man who I still know, he goes to my church, the principal got up and explained to us how there's so much happening to them at that, say, 6th grade, 7th grade age, whether it's, you know, managing feelings and the physical changes and developments. That's always stuck with me, that, oh, so it's not just a case of he's acting like a jerk. You know, these things are, and I would assume, you mentioned the internet, I would assume with social media, it's gotten 10 times worse.
It's a crisis.
Crisis,
yeah,
okay.
We are in a youth mental health crisis that isn't really going away. You know, there's got to be some very significant changes that happen down the road for things to go away. But one of the things I love about just the fact that, like, this book exists, right, is that we've got so many kids that are in need, and we've got wait lists. You know, counselors are, you know, overwhelmed. There's wait lists. So this is an opportunity for kids to be able to just read for themselves and start to get an understanding of what's going on in their body. And even parents, I would strongly recommend that parents read this book, because when you understand the science behind what's happening to the body, you can then make more informed changes in one's life. And there really needs to be a lot of fundamental changes that are made. There are a lot of things that we're just accepting as part of our society with all the phones and all the technology and all of that. And it's really detrimental. I think we're in the middle of an environmental crisis. It's an environmental crisis, right? We've got major shifts in the environment with all this technology. And it's impacting kids' sleep, which is impacting their behavior and mood and all of that. And I know that a lot of parents are really struggling with taking those electronics away, you know, at night. Although we do know that 70% of kids go back online after, you know, parents go to sleep. So
70%?
70%, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And that statistic, I've seen those results with the work that I've done with students, and I've seen other researchers have those same results. Yeah, so, you know, I think having kids have an understanding of that, you know, an intellectual understanding of that might help them sort of work through and make some of the changes that they need to make so that they can feel okay.
Right, and it's a big help to parents too.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Where is the book? Is the book available everywhere?
Yeah, everywhere that there are books. You can go get it. Go to your local bookstore. I think there's a new bookstore opening in Fall River, actually.
Oh, nice.
I heard.
All right.
But yeah, wherever you get books, you can pick it up. And
Amazon also? Or?
Yeah, Amazon, everywhere. If it's like a school system, you can even write to the publisher and get a significant discount if it's for educational purposes, like if you wanted to get for a group or something. Yeah.
So did you say the middle schoolers all have access to this book?
And the high school.
And the high school.
Yep.
Okay. Has there been any time, you mentioned how you spoke to Normandan, Keith, and Roosevelt. Is there any talk about making this an annual event? I mean,
well, it was funded, we should say, by the Mass Cultural Council.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was there was a different name for it now, but it's now called the Experiences Grant. So
Okay.
We did apply again for next year. Fingers
Yes.
crossed that we can
Yes.
do it again.
It sounds like something we should continue to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Because there's always new kids coming in.
Yes.
and-
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I understand you wrote the grant for this.
Yes.
Maybe we can touch on that briefly, because I know a lot of times people say, "Oh, the budget spent on that." This was not from the budget, right?
No,
this
it wasn't from the budget. No.
Right. So,
Yeah.
But that's not an easy process either, from what I understand. Writing grants is a skill.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think mass cultural grants, they made it actually pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do have to, put in what the budget is and what the purpose is, and it has to fit into sort of the parameters of what the grant is funding.
Okay.
But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was happy to do it again.
Cara, did you find at these workshops that I would, am I wrong? I would assume the kids came into the, maybe, I don't want to be here. What is this going to be about?
Yeah.
Did you notice that? And then did you notice an awakening? Like they suddenly realized, hey, this is talking about me.
Yeah, I taught high school for 15 years, so I'm used to big time resistance to anything I say or do. So middle school is actually much more open than I'm used to. So especially the sixth graders, I got hugs right away. I was like, this is heavenly. So yeah, any little bits of resistance, I think once they realize they're going to be drawing, it melts, and I readily recognize that I'm coming in as a stranger, as a new person. And one thing I think is interesting that kids will do, I bring my own pencils sometimes, and some kids just break a pencil right away. And if that was your classroom, you'd be like, hey, we need those pencils. But I just know there's nerves. And so I bring tons of pencils because I'm like, that's okay, here's another pencil, let's keep going. So it's different than a typical art class, but I also want to say too that it's really special that Dr. Mackenzie invited this into the school system, and that she recognized what it could do. And as a creator who's bringing this into the world, there's so much stigma and resistance. So I just really want to say thank you for that, because that trust was really special.
What is the resistance?
I think people are afraid it will do harm somehow, or it will bring negative attention, or they're just really, really cautious about talking about mental health. And I think because Dr. Mackenzie is a specialist, understands how helpful it can be, and that it's not. And many times when I visit to a school that has a bit of resistance from, say, the administration, once they see the book and they see the kids' reaction to it, they relax and and then they start talking about this, and it softens up. But you need somebody that's at a higher level that opens the door to this, and we're very lucky that you're here and you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Dr. Mackenzie, what, when we hear about behavioral it's part of my mind goes, oh, so it's like a guidance, it's not like a guidance counselor, right?
No.
How would you differentiate your job?
So it's more clinical oriented. So I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker, and I'm also certified in integrative mental health. And so, so the school adjustment counselors, which are different from school counselors, there's a change in language. It used to be guidance, now they called school counselors.
Okay.
But there are school adjustment counselors, and so the majority of our school adjustment counselors have licenses, clinical licenses, either LCSWs, LMHCs, or LICSWs. We do have a number of LICSWs on staff. And I've been actually really pushing for licensed folks because of the fact that we are in a youth mental health crisis. And the severity of the symptoms that we're seeing are just increasing, and it's getting really, we're seeing psychotic symptoms earlier, as early as 6, which is unheard of. You won't even see that really in the DSM.
Wow.
And there's just a lot going on. And I think, the kids don't know what to do, the parents don't know what to do, right? And the system is overwhelmed. So. And the thing is, I also don't like the fact that we separate mental health out from health, because really it's a systemic problem. And so if we can talk about it, people can recover. People absolutely recover, and it's possible. And and the thing is, if we continue to not want to talk about it, there's some I think people have this idea that you should just be able to think yourself better. That's not the way it works.
Right.
Our whole system is involved.
Get over it.
You
Relax.
don't just get over it. You have to. There's a systemic approach. You know, if you've got to make some changes, right? It might be a dietary change. It might be, you know, you have to change a relationship that you're in because it's really toxic, or some sort of, or sleeping better, or, you know, not using a substance so much. So there's many factors that go into figuring out how to rebalance the system. And if we don't give kids permission to talk about it, we're never going to get on the other side of this. And I think part of it, like what you're saying, Cara, really is that I think part of the resistance to having the school, let's just say schools, address this, you know, because I would love to do mental health screenings across the board, is that they don't know, they may be afraid of, if a result comes back and there's anxiety or depression or, you know, some suggestion of that, it's like, well, I don't really know what to do with that, so let's just not talk about it. But, you know, any problem that you ignore, it just keeps getting bigger. So
I didn't realize, we're at a crisis level?
it's absolutely at a crisis level.
Right.
Yes.
And Cara, have you seen that in these presentations? Do the kids open up and share with you? I'm not going to ask for specific stories, but
I really don't. That's not my role, because I'm just popping in and popping out, and what these kids need is that person that they see every day to be the one to. But I will say, just as an art teacher, so I give them all this paper, and I do these warm-up exercises, and then we end up making this little creation together. But I actually go around and collect all the warm-up exercises, and that's where all the feelings are, because they think I'm just going to throw it away. Oh, and I go through them. I go, that one. And there's some of them are really moving and really powerful, and they're little scribbles and doodles, but they don't think anyone's paying attention. But that's actually where I'm paying really close attention.
I always love to ask this question. I have a friend who's an art teacher also, so I think I know where you're going to go with this. But when someone says, "Why do we need art in school?" I had art in school, and I draw. I could never draw. It was a waste of my time. Why do we need art in school? Oh my gosh,
we need so much art in school, and music and movement and dance, and all of this is just really, we need to process, we need to regulate, we need to take all that's going on and have our story and narrative and understanding of it, and listen to each other's processing of what our lives are. And as an art teacher, it'll be drawings and paintings and sculptures, but it could be songs, it could be dance, it could be construction, it could be food that we make. But all of this is like the real living, and a way for us to share it with each other. And I think that isolation, where we are feeling, especially during the pandemic, when we lost a piece of that, like, sure, you could be doing stuff, but when you're not together and making, I think that's really special. And I love joining a group of people and making something creative happen, and we walk away lighter, we walk away laughing, we walk away more relaxed. So I feel like it's absolutely valuable and should be very important to schools.
Are we rebounding from the pandemic yet? And the reason I ask is my daughter works in a high school. She's an athletic trainer. And she tells me that the group, I think she says the freshmen that are coming in now to her high school, they don't know how to behave. Or they don't know how to mingle, or be a teammate.
Right.
Because they were so secluded.
Right.
When I asked her if we were coming out of the pandemic phase, you kind of looked like, not really.
So I will say this. I think there are some kids, and I know that I didn't really, I kind of continued to do a lot of things during the pandemic. And I think there probably are some kids out there that were the same, right? And were able to still stay connected, still do things. And those kids, I think, are okay. Then we've got the group of kids that I think, really got secluded. I know that during the pandemic, one of the main things, because of course I'm coaching the counselors online and trying to figure out how to have them see kids online and whatnot. And some of the counselors were saying, I'm just trying to get my student to open the blinds. Right? So some kids just were in their room, stayed, and I think that there are a number of students actually who haven't made it back yet, right? So those kids, and I would say we don't know how those kids are doing, right? Because they're not back in school, but those kids are probably struggling the most. And at some point, we'll see how that manifests in adulthood. I don't know.
Right.
But we do have probably that middle ground of kids who maybe were really online, exposed to a lot of things that they shouldn't have been exposed to, that are, now coming back, and that's why we're seeing like some of the aggression and, people just videotaping fights and things like that, as opposed to intervening and trying to stop things. There's a lot of sensationalism out there. We've got a cultural problem here that we got to fix. But yeah.
Cara, do you work the new technology into your presentations, or
I
do
do
we
a
physically
slideshow,
like pencils and paper?
We physically like pencils and paper. Yeah. There's enough screens, so I'll use it just to show pictures. But after that, we need to get into our hands. I actually make them roll the pencils in there. I do a lot of physical things to just get us into it. And we need to play. We need to have fun. We need to let go and just be here right now in this moment.
Right.
And I think this connection, because she did it with the counselors recently as well, that connection and doing those types of activities is what's going to get our kids back. Get back is connecting with each other, expressing, we've got to give them opportunities like this to express kind of what they're feeling and what's happening, because it's really through connection that we heal, and it's also through connection that, we're going to survive.
So if we have any parents who are not aware of this, they should ask questions, right? Where can I get this book? Or maybe ask the student, hey, have you read that book they're talking about?
Yeah. It's at the library too, so you can take it out from the New Bedford Public Library.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a great, great book. It really is.
I'm going to read it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read a lot, and I don't necessarily read cover to cover because, most authors I find, it's like they make their point and I'm like, okay, I've got it. I don't need to read the rest of the book. That one I read cover to cover, and I do say it's well informed, and it's really, it's great. And she starts out the book just saying how she finds, crumpled up artwork. She's found crumpled up artwork in the garbage, and she'll take it out and then realize that there's something emotional going on with her students and addressing it. So, and she has a lot of her own vulnerabilities in the book as well, which I think is really helpful for people, to be aware of. So it's a really great contribution to the field.
Well, we do have to wrap up because Cara has to get to Hudson, New York for a book fair.
They do.
Once again, Cara Bean, who is an educator, author, illustrator, and Dr. Kathleen Mackenzie, the coordinator of clinical and behavioral services for New Bedford schools. Thank you so much for being with us, and it's a tough job. Thank you for doing that, and hopefully we can turn the corner with this.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Yeah. If you have an idea for a guest for the show, remember we're open to any idea that has to do with the schools that serve students in New Bedford. You can let me know. Message me on Facebook. I'm also on X, or you can email peter.braley@newbedford-ma.gov. Peter.braley .braley@newbedford-ma.gov. I have to write down my own email because I don't know. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, take care.